Good morning. The Senate will come to order. The time has arrived to convene. At this time, we'll ask the unauthorized persons at the exit of the chamber to please leave the chamber, and doorkeepers close the doors. The chair recognizes the senator from the 6th District.
Good morning, Mr. President. You look a little different today. Hola.
¿Cómo está?
Bien, ¿y tú?
Muy bien.
We'll stop. Mr. President, we've got a great group of pages here today from all over this great state. Out of Bremen, we have Jaslyn Davis. From Dahlonega, we have Towns Edmondson. From Fayetteville, we have the Gable sisters, Audrey and Elizabeth. From Albany, we have Fleming Gatewood. From Alamo, Chelsea Gruber. From Glenwood, Madison Holmes. From Snellville, Jamie Joyner. From Roswell, Xander Lee. From Saltee, Everett Limley. From Cumming, Alexander Lopez. From Kennesaw, Milani Medellin. From Morrow, Yaritzi Mejia. From McRae, Kaylee Rojas. From Buchanan, Anna Smith. From Buchanan, Logan Smith. From Atlanta, Nicholas Stoll. From Demarest, John Hayden Touch. From Buchanan, Caden Truitt. And from Demarest, Hudson Weems. Y'all give these pages a big round of applause. We appreciate you being here to serve the great people of the great state of Georgia. Mr. President, the journal is tidy. The journal is correct. I move we dispense with the reading of the journal.
Thank you, Senator, for your hard work, and thank you for the pages that are here. And in particular, thank you to the pages from Haralson County, a county I used to represent, and the senator from the 30th does a very fine job out there. So those of y'all from Bremen and Buchanan, thank you for being here. Is there objection to the dispensing of the reading of the journal? The chair hears none. The reading of the journal is dispensed with. Is there objection to the confirmation of the journal? The chair hears none, and the journal is confirmed. All senators who have bills or resolutions to introduce, please bring them to the secretary's desk at this time. First reading and reference of Senate bills and resolutions.
Senate Bill 622 by Senators Jackson of the 41st and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to incorporate the city of Tucker. Approved.
Slow go.
Senate Bill 623 by Senator Wicks of the 34th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act creating the State Court of Claims. Senate Bill 624 by Senator Williams of the 25th, a bill to be entitled an act to amend an act to create the Public Facilities Authority. Senate Bill 625 by Senator Parent of the 44th and others, a bill to be entitled an act. Senate Resolution 955 by Senators Davenport of the 17th and others, a resolution honoring the life of Mr. Robert
Transportation.
Mr. President, that completes the order.
The Secretary will read reports of standing committees.
Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Banking and Financial Institutions has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 948, due pass. House Bill 1024, due pass. House Bill 1134, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Summers of the 13th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Children and Families has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 181, due pass by substitute. House Bill 1009, due pass. House Bill 1118, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Kirkpatrick of the 32nd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Education and Youth has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 971, due pass. House Bill 907, due pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hickman of the 4th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 328, due pass by substitute. House Bill 1261, due pass. House Bill 874, due pass. House Bill 1077, due pass. House Bill 964, due pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huffstetler of the 52nd District Chairman. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice that I will introduce a minority report to be read along with the majority report of House Bill 328, which passed out of the Senate Committee on Finance on March 16, 2026. Sincerely, Senator Orrock of the 36th District. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 141, do pass. House Bill 439, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1001, do pass. House Bill 1112, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Hofstadler, the 52nd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Government Oversight has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1192, do pass. House Bill 1415, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Beer, the 30th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1097, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1238, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1278, do pass. House Bill 1329, do pass. House Bill 1374, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1396, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Watson, the 1st District Chairman. Dear Mr. Secretary, pursuant to Senate Rule 2-1.6, I hereby give notice that I will introduce a minority report to be read along with the majority report of House Bill 1396, which passed out of the Senate Committee on Health and Human Services on March 16, 2026. Sincerely, Senator Marin of the 9th District. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Higher Education has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 541, do pass. House Bill 1328, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Burns of the 23rd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Insurance and Labor has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 987, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbin of the 16th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Judiciary has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 421, do pass. House Bill 618, do pass by substitute. House Bill 530, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1131, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1128, do pass. House Bill 1268, do pass. House Bill 1208, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Strickland of the 42nd District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Natural Resources and the Environment has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 320, do pass by substitute. House Bill 946, do pass. House Bill 1133, do pass. House Bill 1182, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1266, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Anderson of the 24th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Public Safety has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1191, do pass by committee sub. House Bill 668, do pass by committee sub. Respectfully submitted, Senator Albers of the 56th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Regulated Industries and Utilities has had under consideration the following legislation as instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 232, do pass by substitute. House Bill 1254, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Calzert of the 46th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Retirement has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 438, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Williams of the 25th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Rules has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1020, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Brass of the 6th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Science and Technology has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 147, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Setzler of the 37th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State and Local Government Operations has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. Senate Bill 619, do pass. House Bill 1356, do pass. House Bill 1453, do pass. House Bill 1496, do pass. House Bill 1321, do pass. House Bill 1340, do pass. House Bill 1341, do pass. House Bill 1440, do pass. House Bill 1491, do pass. House Bill 1492, do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Dixon of the 45th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on State Institutions and Property has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Resolution 1050, do pass by substitute. House Resolution 1051, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Harbison of the 15th District Chairman. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Veterans, Military, and Homeland Security has had under consideration the following legislation and has instructed me to report the same back to the Senate with the following recommendation. House Bill 1087, do pass. House Bill 985, do pass. House Bill 979, do pass by substitute. Respectfully submitted, Senator Payne of the 54th District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
The Secretary will read bills and resolutions for the second time.
House Bill 1030 by Representatives Donatucci of the 105th and others, Math Matters Act, enact. House Bill 1284 by Representative Silcox of the 53rd and others, education, awarding of high school diplomas to high school students who are at the end of life, provide. House Bill 1293 by Representative Jones of the 47th and others, education, updated eligibility requirements for the dual achievement program, provide. Mr. President, that completes the order.
It is time for the morning roll call. Any motions to excuse? Chair recognizes the senator from the 33rd.
Thank you, Mr. President, and good morning, y'all. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 5th, 22nd, 41st, 44th for business inside the Capitol.
The senator is asking for your motion to excuse the senators from the 5th, 22nd, 41st, and 44th. Are there any objections to the motion to excuse? Seeing none, they are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 49th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'd like to ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 51st for business inside the Capitol and 47th.
Senator from the 49th asking for unanimous consent to excuse the senators from the 51st and the 47th. Without objection, those senators are excused. Chair recognizes the senator from the 11th.
Thank you, Mr. Leader. I'd like to ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 8th for business inside the Capitol.
The senator from the 11th is asking for, man, I need more coffee this morning. The senator from the 8th to be excused. The senator from the 8th is excused. The chair recognizes the senator from Habersham County, the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 29th and the 19th for business outside the chamber.
The senator from the 50th is recognizing that the senator from the 29th and 19th be excused. Without objection, those two senators are excused. The chair recognizes the senator from the 43rd from DeKalb County.
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask for unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 26th.
Thank you, Senator. Without objection, the senator from the 26th is excused. Any other motions to excuse? Chair sees none. The secretary will call the roll of the senators. Signify your presence by voting the A switch. The secretary will unlock the machine. It is now time for the morning devotion. All senators, please take your seats and cease all audible conversations. I would ask the doorkeeper to secure the chamber at this time. I now recognize the senator from the 32nd District for the purpose of leading the pledge and introducing the chaplain of the day.
I want you to meet my pastor, Reverend Kristen Lee. She's the senior pastor at East Cobb United Methodist Church in Marietta. Over her past 8 years as pastor, she's led the church in their continued focus on outreach and mission in East Cobb. The church regularly provides meals for the homeless, leads after-school tutoring programs at the local elementary school, and runs a transition house on our property for families in housing transmission through a partnership with Family Promise of Cobb County. Reverend Lee previously served as associate pastor of Roswell United Methodist and Fayetteville First United Methodist. She's married to Dr. Eric Lee, who is also a Methodist minister and recently appointed district superintendent in the United Methodist Church. Together, they have 5 children that range in age from 10 to 27, with a 5th grader, 7th grader, and 10th grader still at home. Reverend Lee is a graduate of the University of Georgia and Duke Divinity School, so she has both her football and basketball allegiances all set. When not at church, you can find Kristen cheering from the sidelines at baseball games, cheer competitions, and band performances, or swinging a racket on her neighborhood tennis courts. So we're so happy to have Reverend Lee with us, and please enjoy her devotional.
Good morning. I'm so grateful to be with you all this morning, as I have such great respect and admiration for the work that you do. It's through my relationship with Senator Kirkpatrick that I see and hear about the incredible amount of time and energy and love that you put into your role as representatives here in Georgia. I know there's great excitement about the possibilities and the opportunities that are before you to make changes in our great state. But I know there's also heartache when hopes and dreams for what Georgia can be don't come to fruition. With all that is at stake, I know tensions run high, and I'm grateful for the ways that you take your role and your responsibility seriously and not for granted. Yet I know it takes its toll. So today I want to bring a message of peace, a word of hope, a pause in the midst of the chaos. As we consult the scriptures, we hear the words of the psalmist speak a word of calm into the storms of life. Be still and know that I am God. I wonder, when was the last time you truly stopped? And not just stopped physically, but emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. When was the last time you forced yourself to be completely still? Body, mind, and soul. It's a difficult task, and I recognize even more so for those in this room. You are achievers. Some might even say overachievers. People with big dreams and the drive to make those dreams a reality. It's built into your job. You've got to constantly be thinking about the bills proposed, the committees to be convened, the people you need to talk to, the people that want to talk to you. And oh, I don't have to tell you, by the way, your job's not always secure, and you've got re-elections constantly on your mind. So what would it be like for you to boldly and firmly tell yourself, stop, be still? Now, the stillness is not without purpose. Be still, and the psalmist writes, be still and know that I am God. That's a big caveat. It's not just about being still and resting. It's not about being still to recharge your batteries or gain a clear head or even focus on the task at hand. This is a stillness that reminds us who we are and whose we are. It is a stillness that reminds us that power is not just in our hands, but in the hands of our Creator. It is a stillness that speaks truth into our lives, that we are not alone. God is with us. It's a stillness that allows our heart to beat a little slower, our lungs to breathe a little easier, and even our stomachs to churn a little quieter. If we will allow it, this stillness can overwhelm us, and we will know deep in our bones that our lives, that our work, our ultimate security lies not only in our own strength or our own effort or our own resources, but in the power and presence of God. Now, Senator Patrick will tell you that at our church, I'm a big fan of participatory worship. I don't want to just talk the talk, but I want us to walk the walk. So I'm going to invite you all to a little exercise today. It may be a little uncomfortable, but we could all use with a experience that takes us outside of our comfort zones, I think. So I'm going to invite you to lift your shoulders and release them. To allow your arms to flow at your sides, your feet to relax into the floor. If you choose, you might even want to close your eyes. As we pray and be still together. Be still and know that I am God. Be still and know that I am. Be still and know that I. Be still and know. Be still and. Be still. Be. God, I pray for all these senators gathered here and all who do their work. God, would you move within them, lead them and guide them as they seek to do the best for our great state. God, we are grateful for the great work that they do, the time, the energy, the effort, the love that goes into it. But God, I ask that you will remind them through it all to find moments to be still, to breathe in your peace, and to know that no matter what, it is you, O God, who is in control. Amen.
Always nice to have our doctors of the day here, and to introduce our doctor of the day. Our doctor of the day is a senator from the 54th, good man from Dalton, Georgia. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President. My friends, today we have a Dr. Trayer from Gordon Health, from actually Advent Gordon Health, and it's my honor to present him today. I just to share with you, Advent Gordon is a community hospital in Calhoun, formerly known as Gordon Hospital, that provides a wide range of whole-person, whole health care services, including emergency care, surgical services, women's health, cancer care, and primary care through its network of clinics. And it's my honor to introduce you Dr. Daniel Trayer, who's joined us today.
Thanks, Chuck. Thanks, Chuck. It's a privilege to be with you here today and to serve as Doctor of the Day. It's a great program, and I work in Gordon and Murray counties. I'm also in leadership there for the hospital medicine department and with the medical executive committee in an organization that prides itself to deliver uncommon compassion and excellence, and with the mission of extending the healing ministry of Christ to extend whole person care, mind, spirit, and body. And in leadership, a lot of people get criticized often, and that comes to me a lot in a position of leadership, and I'm sure you all navigate that every day. So I want to be the first to thank you, if no one thanked you today, for all the different special interests you have to navigate every day. Thank you for what you do. Service is challenging and fatiguing, but it does have a depth to it that is fulfilling. So I just want to thank you all for the opportunity.
We have some state champions here today from Brookwood High School, a school that is familiar with state titles in every sport. Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 870 by Senators Merritt of the 9th and others, a resolution congratulating the Brookwood High School boys swim team for winning the 2026 GHSA Class 6A State Swimming Championship and for other purposes. Whereas outstanding dedication, superior teamwork, and extraordinary resilience made this team a spectacular one to observe throughout the season, and as a fitting finale to its remarkable 2025 campaign, the team captured its 10th overall state swimming championship title, and whereas senior Baylor Stanton led the way, setting a state record in the 200-meter IM. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the Senate that the members of this body congratulate the Brookwood High School boys swim team for winning the 2026 GHSA Class 6A State Swimming Championship and extend best wishes for their continued success. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none. The resolution is adopted. I recognize the good senator from the 9th to present our special guest.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. It is a great honor to always honor our students from the mighty 9th, Senate District 9, where we have lots of exceptional athletes. And oftentimes, there are some sports that get forgotten because they're not on TV, when it's football season, and they're not on television every Saturday. But still does not make them any less exceptional, and we want to honor those accomplishments. So today I have the honor of recognizing an exceptional group of student athletes from Brookwood High School, and join me in congratulating the Brookwood High School boys swim and dive team who won the state championship. And this is the second year that they have won. In the past we've had the girls come, but this year the boys have won twice. 2 consecutive years, and winning at this level takes a lot of discipline. There's long hours of training, it's commitment to showing up for each other every single day, and this team has done exactly that, and I know how hard and challenging it is to be a student athlete. I'm honored to have them with us today, and I'm honored to have them in my district. And at this time, I'm going to turn it over to Captain Evan Liu to share some more incredible achievements about his team. All right, Evan.
Hello. First of all, I just want to thank you guys for recognizing us today. I'm so proud of this team and all that we've accomplished together. Through our second state championship and second undefeated season, it's just been an amazing journey. I just want to give a big thanks to all the coaches for all the effort they put into leading us to victory, and the Brookwood community for their unending support. Thank you so much, and go Broncos.
And with that, we want to present them with their resolution. I've upgraded you guys this year.
Secretary, read the caption.
Senate Resolution 679 by Senators Jones of the 10th and others, a resolution honoring the life and memory of Bishop William Bill Harris and recognizing February 17, 2026 as Bishop William Bill Harris Day and for other purposes. Whereas the state of Georgia mourns the loss of one of its most distinguished citizens with the passing of Bishop William Bill Harris on December 9, 2025, and whereas Bishop William Bill Harris was born on February 1, 1943 in Albany, Georgia, a beloved son, husband, father, grandfather, great-grandfather, community leader, and civil rights activist. And whereas Bishop Harris also served as a field worker for the Student Nonviolent Coordinating Committee, the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, and was a founding member of the Atlanta SCLC chapter. And whereas at the height of the civil rights movement in the 1960s, Bishop Harris worked with and marched alongside his friends and fellow civil rights family, the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Congressman John Lewis, Hosa Williams, Reverend Ralph D. Abernathy, and other pioneers of the civil rights movement. Now, therefore, be it resolved by the members of the Senate, join in honoring the life and memory of Bishop William Bill Harris, recognized February 17, 2026 as Bishop William Bill Harris Day, and express their deepest and most sincere regret at his passing. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution? Chair hears none, and the resolution is adopted. Recognize the senator from the 10th. Let's recognize a very special gentleman from our side of town here. So if y'all could give him your attention, we greatly appreciate it. Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President and colleagues. I will share with you this morning that during my 22 years in this body, I've had an opportunity to present a lot of famous and some not so famous people right here from this rostrum. But I would tell you today that there's no person more important than Bishop Harris that I plan to share a little of his history with you. Though he transitioned back in December of 2025, his legacy lives on. I was touched by Bishop Harris some 20 years ago when I became chair of the Georgia Legislative Black Caucus, and he said to then a young state senator, "Come join us on a march in Moores Ford Bridge up in Monroe, Georgia." And I would share with you, being in Atlanta, and I didn't even know where Monroe, Georgia was, but Bishop Harris taught me and took me there, right along with my good friend from the House, Tyrone Brooks. It was then that I had an opportunity to get steeped in the civil rights history. Though I was born close to the 1959 and 60s in Georgia and Atlanta, it wasn't until I had a chance to experience the kinship, the friendship, and relationship with Bishop Harris that I really got steeped in the civil rights movement in our great state of Georgia. And the reason why I got steeped in that relationship is because he was one of the originals who marched with Dr. King. Just allow me a couple of minutes, if you will, Mr. President, to share part of the accomplishments of Bishop William C. Harris. You see, he served as a field worker for the Student Nonviolence Coordinating Committee that we know as SNCC. Bishop Harris was one of the founders of the Atlanta SCLC chapters. And during the height of the civil rights movement in the 60s, Bishop Harris worked with and marched alongside his friends and fellow civil rights family, the late Dr. Martin Luther King Jr., Congressman John Lewis, Hosea Williams, Reverend Ralph D. Abernathy, and others in the civil rights movement. You see, Bishop Harris was instrumental in forming and inspiring me to be a public servant. I can't thank his family enough, who has been one family member who I knew, Madam Chair, the chair lady of Henry County, your father long before I knew you. And Ms. Simmons, thank you for sharing your father with all of us in this great state. I didn't know their history and these connections until I had a chance to speak with your father. And Ms. Brenda Harris, let me just say personally, this great state of Georgia appreciate the service of your husband. And Mr. President, if you would allow, please, I'd like to bring the matriarch that's still standing for the civil rights movement, one of the founders in the great state of Georgia, to this rostrum to speak and just share a few words about your husband, who we loved so very much. Ms. Brenda Harris.
Thank you, Senator Jones. I would just like to start off by saying I am so grateful, and my family as well, as this day has been given to the late Bishop William C. Harris and his legacy of the things that he has contributed to the world. I won't just say to Georgia, because the fighting for civil rights was everywhere. So he was part of it, Atlanta, Alabama, Mississippi, wherever it was needed for him to go. And to Senator Emanuel Jones, and to our Lieutenant Governor of Georgia, Lieutenant Governor Burt Jones. We appreciate you all acknowledging this day for him. He was a veteran of the U.S. Army, where he served for 2 years, and after his discharge, honorable discharge, he was served still in reserve. So in his civil rights, you know, in our household, my kids, when they were growing up, we had strict rules and regulations. And, you know, and to me personally, I think it really was good for them to have them strict rules and regulations, because some things you could do and some things you couldn't do. And the things that you could do, you did them. The things that you couldn't do, you better not do them.
I know you're right, Mama.
And so, you know, I think about these kids nowadays tell you that I don't want to do this. Oh, yes, you will do this, you know. So, you know, we need to put that back into the schools and to the home. Well, first it started at home. So, and, you know, my husband was a very strict person and things, and he expected for me to not, you know, take sides with one of them and not, and sometime I was saying, oh, honey, you know, don't let them do this. You know, he said, no. He said, I said, no. I said, all right. And he was the same way in his work in the civil rights. He was dedicated and could sing, and he could preach too, but that was before that calling. And but he could really, his freedom songs and any kind of song. His mother used to tell me that he used to go out there in the back. He was raised in the country in Albany, Georgia, and sang to the chickens, preached to the chickens. And, you know, so they gave him a little experience, you know, of being able to express that talent God had given him. You know, I just, you know, think about all the things that he was, you know, the husband, kind of husband he was, a good one. And his work in the communities, wherever he went, it was something to be done, he would always get involved in doing it. And so we are just so thankful that of the good works that he did while he was here. And his ministry was the same. He prayed for people right up until the day that he was called home. And so, you know, it's just so much that he have contributed. In his church work, he always helped young people. I don't know how many adopted kids that we had accumulated, you know, doing his ministry and helping kids, kids that came from, you know, different backgrounds. And he wasn't afraid of helping anybody. So, you know, I can go on, and but, you know, we don't want to take up all day because there are some other people here that have some things that they want to express. And my kids are holding me, so, but, you know, I thank God for them. And we have two other kids. I had a son who's, he's deceased, and we have a younger daughter who lives in California that is fighting this flu. So, but, you know, we had, and all my grandchildren, my great-grands, you know, we got about 14, I have to make a correction, we got about 14 grandchildren. Y'all stand up. And great-grands, all of them not here, but the ones that are.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you. Okay, all right.
Well, we have a special guest over in the corner over there, former Representative Jim Cole right here. Let's give former Representative Jim Cole a big round of applause. He is currently serving as the athletic director for Mercer University there in Macon, Georgia, doing a fantastic job. He's got that athletic program rocking and rolling right now. Good to have you here, Jim. And Caroline's doing a wonderful job for us as well, too. She's doing a great job. Are there any unanimous consents? Are there any unanimous consents? Recognize the senator from the 52nd.
Yeah, Mr. President, I move that House Bill 439 be committed to the Committee on Finance so that we can fix a small error in it.
Is there objection? Secretary, read the caption. Motion granted. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 439 by Representatives Yerta of the 152nd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Code Section 48-8-50 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to compensation of dealers for reporting and paying tax and reimbursement deduction, so as to revise deductions allowed to dealers, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Is there any objection? Hearing none. Recognize the senator from 32nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to recognize a special group that is here with us today. It's the Georgia Symphony Orchestra, and they are based in Cobb County, in my county. I'm a season ticket holder, and this is their 75th anniversary. They are also 20 years into the Georgia Youth Symphony Orchestra. They provide beautiful music and great venues in our county, and I hope that you'll join me in welcoming them. They're up in the gallery, and we're thankful that they're still here after 75 years. Thank you. I yield the vote.
Recognize the senator from the 25th.
Sorry, my sound don't go to my hearing aids right. I couldn't hear you. I'm sorry. I apologize. Thank you, Mr. President. I want to recognize our Baldwin County School Superintendent, Christina Brooks. If y'all will stand up, we have Baldwin County Student Leadership, Region 1 Act and Literary Team Champs, representatives from the Region History and Science Fair, State Team Champs, our Governor's Honors Program alumni, Girls Basketball Region Champs, Boys Basketball Elite 8, but a bunch of great young people that are doing a fantastic job, and we're so proud of you. And Dr. Brooks, thank you so much for having them here, and thank y'all. Hope you enjoy. And if you would give them a round of applause for me, please. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President.
Recognize the senator from the 12th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I would like to welcome to the Capitol this morning Youth United of United Way of Southwest Georgia, Albany. They are visiting us, and we thank them. We want to thank them for everything that they do to support United Way of Southwest Georgia and the youth in Albany and rural Georgia as well. So thank you so very much for coming. And if you're in the gallery, would you please stand so we can give you a hand? Oh, they're over there. Thank you so very much. We appreciate you. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. President. I'll yield the well.
Recognize Senator from the 39th.
Good morning, Mr. President and colleagues. I rise today for a point of personal privilege to recognize two groups who are with us in the gallery this morning. First, I want to take a moment to recognize an organization that has been quietly but powerfully changing the trajectory of young people's lives here in Atlanta, Raising Expectations. For 30 years, Raising Expectations has worked alongside students, many of whom would be the first in their families to attend college, providing not just academic support, but guidance, mentorship, and belief in themselves and in what's possible for their future. By breaking cycles of poverty and fostering a culture of high achievement, Raising Expectations has shown us that consistent, intentional investment in young people creates a ripple effect, strengthening families, neighborhoods, and communities for decades. Because what they understand is something we all know to be true. Talent is everywhere, but opportunity is not. And this organization helps close that gap. Today, I will be presenting our Senate resolution recognizing Raising Expectation, its founders, Maria Armstrong and Tangi Allen, Board Chair Tamara Warren, and the staff members who are with us today for their years of service and impact. We thank you for the work you've done and the lives you've changed. I'd also like to recognize another special group joining us today. We have 34 students from the Mount Vernon School, along with their AP government teacher, Dr. Shayway, visiting us in the gallery. When I see students in the gallery, I'm reminded that the future of leadership is already in the room. These students are here not just to observe, but to understand how government works in real time, how ideas move, how debate happens, and how decisions get made. And there's no better classroom than this chamber. To our visiting students, we are glad you are here, and we hope this experience stays with you. And colleagues, I ask that we give Raising Expectation and the students and educators from Mount Vernon School a warm Senate welcome. Thank you.
Recognize Senator from 38th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise in the spirit of my colleague from the 21st. I appreciate that he has been getting up for the last 2 months to recognize Black History Month and Women's History Month. So today, for Women's History Month, I rise to recognize the remarkable life and legacy of Sonia Sotomayor. Justice Sotomayor's story is not one that began in marble halls or circles. It began in a modest neighborhood in the Bronx. She was raised by a single mother who worked long hours as a nurse. Her family lived in public housing, and her father passed away when she was just 9 years old. And yet, from that humble beginning, a young girl with dreams and a fierce work ethic dared to believe that her future could be bigger than her circumstances. She studied hard. She believed in the power of education. She earned her way to Princeton University, then to Yale Law School, and through perseverance and determination, she rose through the legal profession until she was nominated to serve on the highest court in the land, the United States Supreme Court. Now, I'm sure you ask, why does this matter here in Georgia? Because her story reminds us something very powerful. Greatness does not belong only to those born to privilege. Because her story tells us that greatness can come from public housing. Greatness can come from working families. Greatness can come from neighborhoods where opportunity sometimes feels just out of reach. Justice Sonia Sotomayor once said, "Until we get equality in education, we won't have an equal society." Those words should resonate deeply with us in this chamber as we tackle literacy, absenteeism, and safety. During Women's History Month, we celebrate not just the achievements of women like Justice Sotomayor, we celebrate the doors they opened and the possibilities they represent for our next generation. For every young girl in Georgia watching today, whether she's in Atlanta, Dublin, Fairburn, or a small town anywhere in our state, her story reminds them of this: your beginnings do not determine your destiny. And Brooklyn, my daughter, if you work hard, believe in yourself, our daughters, keep pushing forward. Even the highest court in the land may not be beyond your reach. Thank you, Mr. President, and I yield the well.
Recognize the Senator from 21st.
Thank you, Mr. President. Mr. President, ladies and gentlemen of the Senate, you know, we're getting to the point of the session where tensions get a little high. People get to be a little snippy sometimes, so just want to remind everybody to be respectful. Ironically, this morning when I was on the way into the Capitol, I was flipping through the radio, and the Queen of Soul, Aretha Franklin herself, came on with a song of respect. So I thought it was in conjunction with Women's History Month as well. I thought what a great way to remind everybody to be respectful and honor her as well. So Aretha Franklin was more than a singer. She was a force in nature, a voice that could shake the walls of a church, fill the soul of a nation, and move the conscience of a generation. Born in Memphis and raised in Detroit, Aretha grew up surrounded by faith, music, and purpose. She began singing in her father's church as a young girl, where her extraordinary talent became undeniable. But what set Aretha apart was not just her voice, it was her courage, her conviction, and her unwavering belief in her own worth. At a time when opportunities for women, especially women of color, were limited, Aretha Franklin rose to the very top of an industry that often tried to define her. Instead, she defined herself. Through songs like Respect, she gave voice to a movement. She didn't just sing about dignity, she demanded it. And in doing so, she became a symbol of both the civil rights movement and the fight for women's equality. Aretha Franklin showed the world that talent paired with determination can break down barriers. She proved that you do not have to conform to someone else's expectations to achieve greatness. You can stand boldly in who you are. To the young women watching and listening today, especially young women of color, her story carries a powerful message. Your voice matters, your dreams are valid, and your potential is limitless. There will be moments when the world underestimates you. There will be obstacles placed in your path. But like Aretha Franklin, you have the strength to rise above them. You have the ability to lead, to inspire, and to leave your mark on this world. Aretha didn't just entertain, she empowered. She opened doors that had long been closed and made it possible for future generations of women to walk through them with confidence and pride. Her legacy reminds us that greatness is not reserved for a select few. It's within reach for anyone willing to work hard, believe in themselves, and persevere. So today, we honor not just a legendary artist, but a trailblazer, a woman who turned her gift into a platform for change, a woman who taught us all the meaning of respect. May we continue to carry her legacy forward by uplifting one another, by believing in the next generation, and by ensuring that every woman, regardless of her background, knows that she is capable of achieving extraordinary things. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Thank you, Senator. Recognize Senator from 34th. Recognize Senator from 34th.
Good morning, Mr. President. I rise to recognize and honor two outstanding Georgians, Evan Oglesby and Orson Charles, who is to my right. They are men of distinction, former NFL players. One of them is a Georgia Bulldog, too. Both are leaders, mentors, and champions in their communities. Through Evan Oglesby Foundation, Evan Oglesby has impacted tens of thousands of students across Georgia through camps, mentorships, enrichment programs, and scholarships that have changed lives. Like Orson Charles has used his platform and life experience to uplift others through mentorships, community development, and particularly through supporting youth and families facing adversity. Today, we recommend both of them for their service through leadership and their unwavering commitment to making a lasting difference in lives of others. They represent the very best in Georgia, and we are proud to recognize them today. Thank you.
Recognize Senator from the 8th.
Well, thank you, Mr. President. I want to thank the members of this body for helping me pass out a resolution honoring my fraternity, the senator from the 11th fraternity, the senator from the 47th fraternity, our Commissioner Tyler Harper's fraternity, my predecessor in the Senate, Senator Ellis Black, as well as our former House Ag Chairman and our current Farm Bureau President, Tom McCall. Today is National AGR Day in the Capitol. And so I lived in the AGR house for about 4 years. It was a great experience. It had a huge impact on my life. I remember when my dad died, I was at the University of Georgia, and the AGR brothers filled up about 3 rows of pews at the funeral home. And I'll never forget that. It's been a huge part of my life. And the motto for Alpha Gamma Rho fraternity is to make better men and through them a broader and better agriculture. And I can tell you that I'm a better man for my time at AGR, and I'm so thankful my son, my oldest son, JR, and his friends are in the gallery today. They're brothers of mine. So not only is my son my oldest son, but he's also my brother. And so, guys, stand up and be recognized, if you will, please. Y'all give them a round of applause. So, I don't know if this is... I don't know what the decorum is on this, but I'm going to close out with this. It goes, "Ah, roo, hooty toot, good God Almighty, who the heck are we? We're the romping, stomping farmers of the ag fraternity. If you don't know by now, we're the brothers of the plow. Hip rah, hip rah. 3 cheers for AGR. Rah, rah, rah." Thank you all for being here. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Recognize Senator from the 27th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I rise to recognize Georgia Runs on Trucking Day here at the state capitol. you will see a hat and some other gifts for you on your desks from the trucking industry. I first want to talk about the industry. It employs about 326,000 people here in our state, over about 93,000 businesses. Everything that we eat, everything that we wear, everything that we consume got to us most likely by riding at some point in time on a truck. And so we just want to recognize this very important industry, as well as the work that you all have done. 2 years ago, we laid out a freight logistics plan for the state, funded it for the first time last year with the leadership of Governor Kemp, and recognized the need over the next 30 years in the state, most likely after all of us have left this General Assembly, to really take a fresh look at the freight logistics planning that we have to do to ensure that all of the freight that moves through Georgia can do so efficiently. So to the truckers here in the building, thank you all for joining us here today. And for those of you in the General Assembly, thank you for the work that you've done to ensure that we continue to invest in infrastructure in our great state. With that, Mr. President, I'll yield the well.
Senator, thank you, Senator. Thank you, Senator. Senator from 28th.
Wow. The Miller family. Okay. God. Okay. I was waiting to see if they were. Thank you very much, Mr. President. And today is Film Day in the state of Georgia. And thank you for being here. And you make us happy, entertaining us and working hard and bringing even more jobs here to Georgia. I have Mr. Bill Duke, the actor. Where are you? He's standing over here, y'all. And of course, many of you know him from the movies Predator, Commando with Arnold Schwarzenegger, Sisters Act, and so many other. Anyway, he's sitting over there with the NFL players right now. But also, the film industry and all of us are celebrating Mr. Craig Miller, who was a visionary leader here to shape Georgia's film and television industry. Where are they? The family was right there at the door. But it's an opportunity. He's given opportunities for small business, local communities, and thousands of hardworking Georgians. The film industry has fueled our economy while inspiring countless Georgians to create their big dream. And Mr. Craig Miller understood that when we invest in the arts, we are also investing in our people. And because of his work, so many Georgians have found careers behind the camera, on set, and in industries that keep production moving. So today we remember Mr. Craig Miller. Will y'all I want his family to please stand and be recognized. But they're at the door. They're at the door, and I think they won't let them in. Will they let them in so we can give them a warm welcome? And also, please stand up, everyone from the film industry who are here today. But here's the family that's coming in right now. Well, I just introduced the fact that we have a resolution that's been presented to you already, and we're glad to have you here. We really, really miss your father and your husband, but this is the family, Mr. Lieutenant Governor. Can you raise your hand so people will know where? There you go. So let us honor them. And senators, will we stand up and give them a warm welcome, please? Look up in the back gallery. We have all of this. This is our film industry that brought us from number 38 to number 1. We're ahead of New York and, yes, I am, and Hollywood. Again, we thank you. Thank you for being here. We're on a time schedule, so they're going to give me the hook. Y'all know about that, right? So thank you very much, and thank you, family. Please come up here and take a picture with the Lieutenant Governor. Thank you.
If I could have the Senate's attention real quick, please. If I could have the Senate's attention, I would like to take a point of personal privilege. We got our Chief of Staff back there in the back. Look at him. Hey. Hey. Anybody wants to get a Senate bill through the House, there's a man to talk to right there. How you doing? Good to see you. We're coming down the home stretch of this session right now, and tempers are getting hot. People are getting a little upset. We got a budgetary process going on. I've had a lot of requests from a lot of different senators from all over the state, from Columbus to Augusta to Savannah, Macon, all these places. And I want to recognize our chair of the appropriations as well as the sub-appropriations chairs for the good job that they're doing right now and trying to make sure that every senator gets accommodated. Because our responsibility as elected officials is a fiduciary responsibility, and it is to take care of the best interests of the state as a whole. So I want to remind everyone as we're coming down the home stretch that we are trying to be accommodating, and we are trying to, doesn't matter what party affiliation you have or whatever it might be, we're trying to be mindful of everyone's needs and wants in their districts. Now, when that bill leaves here, it goes to our state agencies, and our state agencies should take the same responsibility of minding the people's business the best they can. But I don't think there's any secret, it's been brought to light here recently, that we've had vendors who've been taking advantage of our agencies to the tune of over $1 billion in non-bid funds. No bid funds on the health care arena at that. Something that we talk about all the time, about affordability, about hospitals in rural and metro Atlanta not being able to keep its doors open because of cost and personnel. So when I look at vendors who are taking advantage of loopholes that have been offered through the agency, we're going to close those loopholes this week. I can assure you that. And but it does really kind of disgust me that you have one private company that's used taxpayer dollars to basically triple the cost of health care in this state. Atlanta Medical would still be open. Rural hospitals would still be open because they all point to the cost of personnel in health care. So that needs to be said, and it needs to be recognized because it's happened right up under our noses. And if we want to allow other vendors to take advantage, which I'm sure there's others that need to be held accountable, but I don't believe there's one that touches as many people as in the healthcare industry. And so I don't mind calling out Jackson Healthcare for being the culprit of our healthcare costs in this state more than tripling when you allow a private entity to be monopolizing an industry like they have. So when people ask me, how do you fend off so much money being thrown at you? I say it's hard to defend that somebody has the keys to the treasury. And that's what we've allowed to happen in this, not this body, but we've allowed it through the agencies and not holding our agencies accountable. So when you look at wanting to run something like a business, you got to count every penny, and you got to count every penny, and the dollars will take care of themselves. And you have to hold everyone accountable in this room, the next chamber, and the ones who are in charge of running your state government. So I just want to remind everybody, when you have these wish lists, if you're unable to get what you need for your constituents, think about the waste that has gone on the last several years that has made that possible and made it impossible for you to get necessary resources to your communities, because every one of you in here have sent in a request. And so I think as we move forward, just be mindful that we hold each and every one of us accountable, because we're here on the taxpayer's dime, not on your dime, not on somebody else's. We're here to represent the people of the state and put forth the best policies, but also put forward the best way to spend their money. And it isn't by monopolizing private entities with property taxpayers' money. So thank y'all very much. I appreciate the point of personal privilege. Recognize the Majority Leader.
So I just want to take a quick moment. Today is my daughter Madison's 16th birthday, sweet 16, Madison Rose Anna Vitarde. Just want to wish her a happy birthday. I know she's having an awesome day at North Paulding High School, where it seems like they're winning a lot of state championships right now. But I hope you have a great day, my dear, and look forward to seeing you tonight to celebrate your birthday. Love you.
Any more points of personal privilege? You have a consent calendar of privileged resolutions. Does any senator wish to remove a resolution from the consent calendar? Is there objection to the adoption of the resolution on the consent calendar? Chair hears none, and the resolution on consent calendar is adopted. Are there any motions to withdraw or commit? You have before you a consent calendar of local bills. Mr. Secretary, are there any objections?
No objections have been filed, Mr. President.
Is there any objection to agreeing to the report of committee on state and local government operations, which is favorable to the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar? Chair hears none. The report of committee is agreed to. Question is on the passage of the bills on the local consent calendar. All those in favor will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 0. This bill on the local consent calendar, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. As the majority leader.
Mr. President, let's keep this party going. That's unanimous consent that HB 376 and HB 1159 be engrossed.
Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 376 by Representatives Hilton of the 48th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to the imposition, rate, consumption, exemptions, and credits for state income tax, so as to increase the amount of tax credits available for the rehabilitation of certified structures, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date applicability, to repeal conflicting laws, for other purposes. House Bill 1159 by Representatives Gamble of the 15th and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to the imposition, rate, commutation, exemptions, and credits relative to income taxes, so as to exempt the taxation all income received by individuals, corporations, and partnerships under the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program of the United States Department of Agriculture, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective purpose, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Majority Leader has moved to engross House Bill 376 and House Bill 1159. Is there objection? There's objection. Would you like to speak to your objection?
Thank you, Mr. President. The reason for the objection today is I've heard many times that we only will engross bills from Finance, and Ethics. However, HB 376 comes out of the Committee on Economic Development and Tourism, and if it was a matter of practice or principle, then the majority party would continue to engross just ethics and finance bills, but this is now a bill that has come out of Economic Development and Tourism, and so this sets a precedent of this body engrossing bills from just any committee, and so therefore, Mr. President, the Minority Caucus is opposed to the engrossment of these pieces of legislation as we move forward in the rest of this session, and with that, I yield the well.
Does the majority leader wish to speak?
I'm going to be very, very brief. I know my dear friend from the 2nd, I'm sure there are people in his city that utilize 376, so we'll see how he votes on that bill. But literally, both these bills are both Title 48 bills, and that's the reason for engrossment. So please vote green. Thank you.
Senator from the 2nd, for what purpose do you rise?
Just a parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, is it not true that we always hear from the majority leader that the majority party only engrosses bills from ethics and finance? Is that not true?
Senator, I think they're following the rules that they usually follow over there in the majority caucus. Senator from the 6th over there, what you got over there? Why don't you come to and show that in the well real quick? Show it everybody. Is this part of a motion right here?
Today's self-direction day, and I am a champion, as you can see by my belt. So when y'all see them around the Capitol today, y'all welcome them and learn a little bit more about it. Thank you.
All right. All right, the motion is on the table to engross. We'll come back to him in a second. Motion is on the table to engross. All those in favor of engrossment will vote yea. All opposed, nay. Secretary, unlock the machine. On the motion for engrossment, the yeas are 30 and the nays are 20, and this motion has prevailed. Senator from the 27th, did you have a question for the heavyweight champion next to you over there?
I did, actually, Mr. President. I've never heard of Self-Direction Day. I was wondering if the senator from the 6th could opine on exactly what that may be, since he's the champion.
Well, since y'all sit right beside each other, I'll let y'all talk that through. So, moving on to the rules calendar. House Bill 998. Secretary, read the caption.
House Bill 998 by Representatives Leverett of the 123rd and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 4 of Chapter 5 of Title 46 of the Official Code of Georgia annotated relating to telecommunications and competition development so as to authorize certain Tier 2 local exchange companies to elect to become subject to rate of return regulation, to repeal a limitation on the period of certain distributions can be made from the Universal Access Fund, to provide for related matters, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Committee on the Senate of Economic Development and Tourism recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Eccles of the 45th District Chairman. Mr. President, that completes the order.
Recognize the senator from the 23rd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Colleagues, I bring you House Bill 998. This is about affordability. It's about affordability in rural Georgia equivalent to affordability in our metro regions. It's about access. It's about every resident of Georgia having access to a reliable telecommunication lines, both in the rural parts of our state that is already in the urban parts of our state. It's really about business. It's about commerce. If you do business outside the metro areas, you cannot conduct business unless you have a reliable voice telecommunications line. So, where we are today is to recognize that we continue to have service gaps in the cell industry. I live in rural Georgia. I live at 5417 Newington Highway. It's right on the border of the Savannah River. I am on the fringe of cell service. I cannot get reliable cell service in my home. I have to rely on a landline. This legislation continues a program that was originally established by the General Assembly in 1995 to help ensure that rural Georgians had reliable voice communications. That in particular, they had access to emergency services. In many rural areas, in mine and in many of yours, there are gaps in cell coverage. They still remain. And the only reliable telecommunications access point is through a land-based line. These are in sparsely populated areas, which means their costs are significantly greater than in our urban and metropolitan area. And the best thing about the Universal Access Fund is it ensures everywhere in Georgia you have stable, reliable telecommunications. We have to recognize that the cost per mile in those rural areas is much greater than the cost per mile in the urban areas, and the Universal Access Fund allows that to happen. Let's just make sure you understand what happens in this bill. The most important thing is it would take the current environment that would sunset in 2030 and extends it to 2040 so that we can have a stable environment. We're already seeing where small rural telephone companies, there are 22 Tier 2 telecommunications companies in Georgia. There is one Tier 1 company. Now, let me explain. A Tier 1 company has more than 50,000 line access points. A Tier 2 company has less than 50,000. So, one Tier 1, 22 Tier 2s servicing the rural parts of our state. Extends the sunset from 2030 to 2040. It requires all of those companies to be under a rate of return formula that's administered through the Public Service Commission. It codifies an annual audit. They can only receive reimbursement from the fund for direct expense costs to delivering telecommunication services in rural areas, and it does provide a limited opt-in. Again, there are 22 telecom Tier 2 companies in Georgia. 19 of them are a part of this program. There are 3 that are not. This would allow until August the 1st of 2026 for those 3 to decide whether they wish to be subject to rate of return, and whether they wish to comply with PSC oversight of their communications environment. So, I ask that you favorably consider House Bill 998. If you do business outside the metro area, you have to have a landline today. If you have family outside of metro area, there's no guarantee you can communicate with them unless they have a landline. I will suggest to you that it is the lifeblood of safety during Hurricane Helene. We had telecommunications down all over my region. There were no cell towers. The only reliable communication option was a landline that was based in the service region from these 22 telecom Tier 2 companies. So it's a safety issue, it's an economic engine issue for commerce, and it's an access issue to my constituents in rural Georgia. So, Mr. President, I would ask that the Senate favorably support House Bill 998, and I'm happy to consider any questions you might have.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 35th.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Senator, do you yield?
I do.
I really appreciate this bill. Definitely leaning towards supporting it. But just so I can better understand, is it true that those in more urban areas their fair share is, I guess, less compared to what someone in a rural area will be paying? Are rural area folks paying more, or is this where the state comes in? Just want to better understand.
Thank you for the question. This creates parity so that it remains affordable in rural areas. The best illustration I could give you is that the number of access points per mile in the urban area is hundreds of times more than in rural areas. So that in some cases I have to go multiple miles to collect a dozen or more customers, where I can do 1 mile in the metro regions and have thousands. So it creates an affordability balance from metro to rural, and it ensures universal access across our state.
Okay, so is it true that this bill would suggest that the state believes that equity is important when it comes to telephone service?
I believe that it's important that all Georgians have access to reliable telecommunications services, and this bill ensures that that will continue for the next decade. I'd point out that these are small businesses. They are run on very limited margins, and without access to the Universal Access Fund, their financing is in jeopardy.
That's a good bill. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
I recognize the senator from the 42nd for a question.
Does Senator yield?
Certainly.
Senator, isn't it true that in our state we see a lot of population changes where you see population decreases in certain parts, the rural parts of our state, while population increases around metro Atlanta?
The senator is correct.
Do you further yield?
Yes, sir.
Isn't it true that one of the side effects of that is that with redistricting, population changes, there are less people up here in this body and across the hall over in the House that represent and speak for rural Georgia?
You are correct. Thank you.
Do you further yield?
I do.
Isn't it true that bills like this is important for all of us, especially people in metro Atlanta, to listen when it comes to bills like House Bill 998 about the unique challenges that rural Georgians have, and that's one of the reasons we should be supporting this bill?
It is a critical issue that we maintain telecommunication access throughout our state, and this bill helps ensure that. Thank you.
Recognize the senator from the 4th.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator Yield.
I do.
Senator, with the 9/11 service that we depend on so heavily for emergency situations, does the cell phones handle that type of service, or do we have to have landline service to handle that?
Regrettably, the cell service does not accurately identify the location of the emergency. The most effective way to determine the location where EMS needs to respond, or fire, or whatever, is through a physical location that is associated with a landline, a telecommunication telephone line.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Senator Yield.
Yes, I do.
Senator, don't you, in our part of the world, which is South Georgia, don't we see a lot of companies now and residences that have metal roofs on them?
Unfortunately, we do.
Senator, are you aware that most of the time cell phones do not work in those type of settings?
They do not.
So you have to have a landline phone?
You have to have a landline to access your telecommunications network.
Okay, one more question, Senator.
Certainly.
Would you also then agree that the needs of rural Georgia are different than the needs of metro Georgia?
They are, but they are codependent. So the metro regions cannot be successful without the rural participation in business, in commerce, in education, in transportation. So we're part of the ecosystem of Georgia, and we have to have reliable telecommunications access.
Thank you, Senator.
Thank you. If there are no further questions, Mr. President.
I recognize the senator from the 24th.
Senator, you yield for
I do.
a few questions. Senator, aren't we blessed in the Atlanta area to have all type of services?
We are. We're very fortunate in our metro regions to have multiple communication paths, including landlines, physical lines, but also reliable cell service.
Senator, isn't it true that a person that lives in the rural Georgia is just as important as a person in the Atlanta area?
The gentleman knows of what he speaks.
And Senator, isn't it true that the people in rural Georgia that lives on a dirt road possibly does not have all the blessings that we have up here for services?
They do not. I would say that the reliable telecommunication services is an essential part of their ability to continue to progress and contribute to the economy of Georgia and to have a fruitful and productive life, especially when it comes to communicating with family and friends outside of those rural areas, and especially when it relates to emergency service access.
Thank you for helping the rural people.
Thank you.
No more questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr.
We do
President.
have some amendments offered. The Secretary will read the caption.
Mr. President, Senator Jones of the 22nd offers, and others offer the First Amendment to amend House Bill 998 by replacing lines 1 and 2 with the following: to amend Title 46 of the OCGA relating to public utilities so as to authorize certain, by replacing line 9 with the following: of such report to provide for a definition, to reestablish Consumer Utility Council to represent consumers in matters of the Public Safety Commission or other agencies concerning public utilities, to create the Office of Consumers Utility Council, and for other purposes. Mr. President, Senator Parent of the 44th offers Amendment 1A to amend Amendment 1 to House Bill 998 by replacing lines 5 through 12 with the following: of such report to prohibit certain costs incurred by an electric utility as a result of providing electric services to commercial data centers for being included in any rates or charges of such electric utility, unless such rates or charges are designed to recover costs solely from, or at least essentially from, commercial data centers, to provide for a definition, to repeal conflicting, and for other purposes. Mr. President, that completes the order.
I recognize the senator from the 22nd to speak to his amendment. He waives. The senator from the 44th, would you like to speak to the amendments?
Thank you, Mr. President. I am going to speak to both amendments, the senator from the 22nd Amendment and then 1A, which I have introduced. Amendment 1 would reestablish a Consumer Utility Council at the Georgia Public Service Commission. And this is important because since the Consumer Utility Council was defunded in 2008, consumers, bill payers have not had an independent voice with full participation rights in rate cases and other important proceedings that directly affect their bills in any of these matters in front of the Public Service Commission. While consumers have been left without a fully participating independent voice on their behalf in Public Service Commission proceedings, the utility companies still have been able to have teams of lawyers and lobbyists that are addressing their interests in front of the Public Service Commission, and of course, as we know, in front of this very body. So, I think that it's critical that there is this independent representation, especially while Georgians are struggling with high power bills. Our bills have gone up. Those of us that pay Georgia Power bills have gone up 6 times in 2 years and are now among the highest in the country. And these proceedings are very opaque, very technical, inaccessible to the public. And the way it stands right now, there is no party that has full discovery rights that can look at the trade secret documents and all of the rest in these proceedings. We also are one of only 3 or 4 states that does not have one. The need is clear. I would posit the need is clear. Not having one or not advancing legislation to reestablish the Consumer Utility Council basically says we don't want transparency in this process. We don't want fairness. We don't want oversight. We want the utility companies to be able to have a finger on the scale. And this would be a step towards restoring balance. Speaking to the Amendment 1A, the Public Service Commission in December authorized Georgia Power to add 10,000 megawatts of capacity that mostly is going to be in the form of new natural gas plants. And that is on top of another 4 gigawatts that the commission certified in 2024. What that means is there is a massive build out underway that's been greenlit by the Public Service Commission to double the amount of capacity the system has to serve large load customers. What that means is to serve AI companies, data centers on behalf of tech companies and tech billionaires. Legislation passed a few weeks ago does not fully protect residential and small business customers from bearing the financial risk of this unprecedented build out. It relies very heavily on anticipated contracts that, again, no one can actually see, that would possibly require them to pay for some of the initial cost of build out, but does not cover consumers in the event that the contracts and load and data centers don't materialize or don't stay past the length of the contract, which, as I told you before, are usually 15 years, whereas the build out will need to be paid for 45 to 50 years. And if they don't come, then there will be the right to recover from consumers. And Georgia voters feel very strongly that if we are doubling our capacity to serve data centers, then it's data centers and tech billionaires that need to fund that build out, not them. So I ask for your support for both of these amendments, and happy to answer any questions or yield the will. I'll yield the will. Thank you.
She's yielded the well. Chair recognizes the senator from the 13th. Do you still want to speak to the bill, Senator?
Thank you, Mr. President. Folks, for all you people that don't live in rural Georgia, I know it's a little bit hard to figure out why rural Georgia needs something like this right here, but I want to put this to you in very plain terms. I still have people in my district that don't have cell phones. A lot of them don't have cell phones, believe it or not. I find that quite unusual, but when I ask them why they don't have a cell phone, The response is, because I don't have any signal. And if I try to use my cell phone in my home, I can't talk to anybody. It's garbled and cut off, or you lose signal. It drops it all the time. We must maintain rural Georgia. And that's why I'm in favor of this bill, and I appreciate the Senator bringing this bill to us from the 23rd, because we need this bill in rural Georgia to maintain the continuity. And I know rural Georgia is a massive area compared to the big city. My God, I got one county that's 73 miles from end to end. You can put Fulton County and Cobb County in that county. You know, it needs help. And that's why I support this bill, and I appreciate the Senator bringing it. I won't speak to the amendment. But I will speak to that bill. We need to support this bill. Thank you. Mr. President, I yield the will.
Chair recognizes the senator from the 56 to speak to the motion.
Thank you, Mr. President. I'm here to talk about the bill, and I really commend the senator from the 23rd for what he's trying to do. Often in this chamber, we get passionately excited about helping children, helping rural Georgia, helping different areas, and that is a very good thing. But I think we have to know a little history on this before we jump forward and make sure we're all knowing what the facts are. When this fund was created 30 years ago, it was created to connect lines, back then almost exclusively by copper lines, to areas that did not have access for the purposes of communication, for their business, for their home, and to 911. That has been done. At this point, the people that have lines already have those installed. They have already long been paid for, and they are what's called maintenance mode now with the telecoms, which is their most profitable part of a telecommunications company, is those that are already installed and are just on monthly residuals. There are not a lot of new people getting new lines in rural Georgia. And in fact, people are dropping their lines all over the state, urban, rural, and suburban, at a dramatic rate. Yet what we're doing today is saying we have to then prop up something that is going down, that is already making more money than it ever has been, while at the same time we've spent billions and billions of dollars building out broadband. And with broadband, you can have a free IP phone that will pinpoint your location. These two things just don't add up, folks. Now, another comment was made about how cell service works with 911. I've got news for you. With your cell phone, I can pinpoint your location within 3 feet of where you are, as opposed to your home, which may be in acres of property. That's just a false explanation. It's just not right. We were part of the negotiations, Senator from the 46 and other of us, 10 years ago when this came up the last time. Everybody agreed this was going to end by 2030 until we wanted more money again. It's 2026, folks. This doesn't expire for 4 more years, and you're being asked to extend it out 14 years. 14 years. Do you know what's going to happen with technology in 14 years? We're seeing it all over with low-level satellites, with all sorts of changes in communication. This is a $2.60 tax every month on every citizen in the state of Georgia for something that has long been agreed is still profitable. And while we love rural Georgia, we love suburban Georgia and urban Georgia, we have to quit creating a false narrative, something that's dramatic, that's simply not true. This service can stay. It will stay. It's in the books for the next 4 years. And let's be smart about this and not put the burden back on the Georgia taxpayers. Thank you. I yield the well.
I recognize the senator from the 31st. What purpose do you rise?
Mr. President, at the appropriate time, I'd like to object to the amendments.
State your objection.
Mr. President, I object, according to Senate Rule 7-1.6, that this is a set of amendments designed to subvert the rules of the Senate with a floor amendment.
All right. In the Senate rules, I'm referring to Senate Rule 7-1.6, subsection D. It says an amendment or series of amendments offered in the nature of a substitute for the purpose of circumventing paragraph B of this rule shall be out of order. In paragraph B, and it says this determination is made by the president. Paragraph B talks about a substitute being 3 pages or longer. So I agree with the objection, and the amendments, Amendment 1 and Amendment 1A are ruled out of order. All right, we have an objection, but it's in the opinion of the president. I recognize the senator from the 14th who's got his button pushed like is the way we do it here. Thank you.
Mr. President, parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. President. I want to start by saying I know the chair is very thoughtful and is attempting to be objective in applying this analysis, and I just want to highlight for the chair the way that these amendments are structured. So is it not true, Mr. President, that Amendment 1A does not simply add to Amendment 1? Amendment 1A presents an option that either the lines 17 through 61 of the original Amendment 1 will take effect, or those would be replaced with a different idea. So what I'm trying to get at, is it not true, Mr. President, is that this is not going to be in the aggregate more than 3 pages. It would never circumvent the 3-page rule, and in fact would allow for the Senate to choose between 2 possibilities that are both compliant with the rules. Is that not true, Mr. President?
Respectfully, Senator, I view this as a series of amendments, and I look at it, and it's 1 page, 2 page, 3 page, 4 pages. So that's my ruling. Amendments are out of order. Chair recognizes the senator of the senator from the 41st was ahead of you, and then we'll come to you.
Point of order, Mr. President.
Yeah, what's your question?
Mr. President, the rules state that in order for it to be considered a substitute, it has to be 3 pages. It cannot be more than half the length. Our word count,
I've made my decision on that. Now, you can challenge the decision of the chair.
We do challenge the decision of the chair, but we would like to speak to the motion for why we are challenging the ruling of the chair.
Stand by. Okay, so you've challenged the ruling of the chair, is my understanding. And so that is not, you can't speak from the well, it's just a vote. So the senator from the 42nd has moved to challenge the ruling of the chair. The chair has ruled that the amendments are out of order based on the rule and Senate rules that I referenced. The question is, shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? Vote yea to sustain the ruling of the chair. Vote no to overturn the ruling of the chair. All those in favor will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. Senator from 41st, what purpose do you rise?
Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Isn't it true that the underlying bill is 1,200 words, but our amendment is less than 600, therefore making this within the proper rules of our Senate?
Your amendment is attempting to be a bill substitute, and I've ruled on that already. Chair recognizes the senator from the Metro Atlanta area. I can't see your senator from the 44th.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. President. Parliamentary inquiry.
State your inquiry.
Is it not true, Mr. President, that the last time this issue came up, we abruptly adjourned the Senate to not deal with it, and now we're contending with spurious orders that don't follow Senate rules to avoid it?
You're welcome to your opinion on that, Senator. On the ruling to whatever this is, shall the Shall the ruling of the chair be sustained? The yeas are 31. I'm going to use the gavel on this one. The yeas are 31 and the nays are 21. The chair is sustained. All right, so I recognize the senator from the 14th.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. President.
State your inquiry.
Mr. President, isn't it true that what we just witnessed is an example of what the former Secretary David Cook was talking about when he used to say that the rules are whatever 29 senators say they are? Isn't that true, Mr. President?
You're welcome to your opinion on that. I think the rules are quite clear on this issue. Chair recognizes the senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Pursuant to Mason's main on legislative procedure, I move that we divide the question on the amendments and vote on the division of those amendments.
They've already been ruled out of order, and my decision's been sustained by the body. Thank you, though, Senator. Very clever and creative. Chair recognizes the senator from the 55th.
Parliamentary inquiry, Mr. Presiding Officer.
State your inquiry, Senator.
Is it not true that one of these amendments could be withdrawn and the rule would not have any applicability as to what the presiding officer has ruled inappropriate and out of order?
Senator, they've been ruled out of order. That's for you to decide about how to proceed further. Thank you. All right. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair recognizes the senator from the 50th.
Thank you, Mr. President. And I know we're moving fast. There's a lot going on, but I just want to ask y'all to slow down for a second and hear me out on the underlying bill. Not long ago, in my district, there was a bad storm, power went out, and families lost cell phone service for days. Not hours, days. No ability to call loved ones, no ability to reach emergency services, nothing. It didn't matter if you had Wi-Fi or not, power was gone. The cell phone towers were down. And at that moment, all the advanced technology in the world did not matter because it failed. But you know what didn't fail? A simple landline. And those in my district who had landlines were able to communicate. Being able to communicate in times of crisis is extremely important, and it matters in rural Georgia, especially in the mountains. Now, I understand the argument on the other side. Some say landlines are outdated, that we've moved on, but I'd challenge that thinking. I'm going to get a little bit outside the box here, so just follow me. I took a class in college one time that was talking about the philosophy of technology and whether technology shapes culture or whether culture shapes technology. One of the biggest examples is, do y'all know why songs typically are about 2 to 3 minutes historically? It's not because humans just love that time. It's because back in the day, 3 minutes was all you could put on a record. So if you wanted to write a song that could be mass produced, you had to do it within 3 minutes. Same thing with fireplaces in houses. At first, it was designed so that people could congregate in one room to get heat. Well, now we have central heating and air, but you still have fireplaces. Some of them are decorative in homes. So does technology shape culture or does culture shape technology? The answer is it goes both ways. Technology leaves a footprint. It shapes how we live, even after we've outgrown the need that created it. We have a culture around communication in our country that is disappearing quickly. Most people in this room probably remember the rule: you don't call someone before 9 a.m. and you don't call them after 9 p.m. Most people in this room know how to leave a message. Most people in this room know how to call and ask for someone at a residence or at a business. That culture is disappearing, but there is a group of parents that are my age and younger who are going back to that. There are parents who actually are reaching out to these telephone companies because we want landlines in our homes. We do not want our kids completely reliant on Wi-Fi, completely reliant on tablets, completely reliant on screens. So parents are actually buying landlines. So the argument that landlines are completely disappearing is wrong. Parents deserve the ability to choose the way their kids communicate. So the question before us today is a bigger one than you realize. The question is, are we shaping technology to serve people, or are we letting convenience dictate what people are allowed to have? Because for Georgians, especially in rural areas, this is not about nostalgia. It's about safety. It's about access. It's about having a communication system that works when everything else doesn't. And it's about parents having a choice to parent their children. I'll also say this, and I'm going to say it carefully but honestly. There are also growing concerns around the country, especially among parents, about constant exposure to wireless signals and EMF from screens. Whether you think those concerns are overstated or not, they are real to real families who we represent. And what is the one method of communication that avoids all the EMF? A wired landline. No signal dependence, no constant wireless transmission, just a direct physical connection that does its job quietly and reliably. Now, we don't have to settle all these scientific debates, but having a low-tech, low-exposure option is a smart, balanced approach. This bill doesn't force anyone to go backward. It simply ensures that we don't leave people behind. So I ask for your favorable consideration on this, and with that, I yield the will.
I recognize the senator from 31st for a motion, maybe.
Mr. President, call a question.
Senator from the 31st has moved the previous question. Is there objection? There is objection. All those in favor of the motion will vote yea. Those opposed, no. The secretary will unlock the machine. I recognize the senator from the 15th. What purpose do you rise?
Yeah, Mr. President, I ask unanimous consent to excuse the senator from the 10th for business inside.
We'll do it after this vote. Senator from the 10th. On the motion, the yeas are 31 and the nays are 20. The motion has prevailed and the previous question is ordered. Senator from the 6th, what purpose do you rise? These waves. Is there objection to the agreeing of the report of committee, which is favorable to the passage of the bill? Chair hears none. Report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? Chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill will vote yea. Opposed, nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the passage of the bill, the yeas are 50 and the nays are 2. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. Secretary, read the caption to House Bill 1159.
House Bill 1159 by Representatives Gamble, the 15th, and others, a bill to be entitled an act to amend Article 2 of Chapter 7 of Title 48 of the Official Code of Georgia, annotated, relating to the imposition, rate, computation, exemptions, and credits relative to income taxes, so as to exempt from taxation all income received by individuals, corporations, and partnerships under the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program of the United States Department of Agriculture, to provide for related matters, to provide for an effective date, to repeal conflicting laws, and for other purposes. Mr. President, the Senate Committee on Finance recommends that this bill do pass. Respectfully submitted, Senator Huff Stetler, the 52nd District Chairman. Mr. President, a fiscal note has been attached. Mr. President, that completes the order.
I recognize the senator from the 50th District to speak to House Bill 1159.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today to bring you HB 1159. For those of you who are following, President Trump on December 8, 2025 announced a $12 billion Farmer Bridge Assistance Program. This would go to American farmers in response to temporary trade market disruptions, high input costs, and increased production costs that affect our farmers every day. These federal bridge payments are intended in part to aid farmers until investments from the One Big Beautiful Bill Act reach eligible farmers on October 1st, 2026. Some disruptions farmers are facing include reference prices, which are set to increase between 10 and 21% for major covered commodities such as soybeans, corn, and wheat. Of the $12 billion provided, up to $11 billion will be used for the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program, which provides broad relief to the United States row crop farmers. This legislation would provide farmers with an income tax deduction equal to any payments received as income through the FBA program. Essentially what this does is the federal funds that farmers receive will not be taxed in the state of Georgia. I'm happy to answer any questions, but I just ask for your favorable consideration to support our state's #1 industry, agriculture, and help them get through this time.
No questions, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. President. I yield the bill.
I recognize the senator from the 14th to speak to the measure.
Thank you, Mr. President. I rise today in enthusiastic support of this bill. I want to be clear, the level of enthusiasm that I have for this bill is extreme enthusiasm. This must be a fully green board. Anybody who votes no on this is making the wrong choice for Georgia and is bad at politics. Let me detail for you a few reasons why it's critically important that this chamber, this body, pass this legislation today. And I'll start by rooting my comments in the values of our dear friend from the 8th Senate District. The senator from the 8th has made it extremely clear that supporting farmers in the state of Georgia means more than a couple partisan talking points. And the reason partisan talking points don't get you there is because we've got problems on both sides of the aisle, folks, when it comes to rural Georgia and the support that farmers deserve. You've got some folks who don't worry about what? Corporate consolidation. That there are mom and pop farmers that need our assistance, that need robust antitrust rules, that need the ability to compete in a tough marketplace. You also have on the other side some politicians who are not that concerned about international competition and are not concerned about protecting the marketplaces in which we compete at a high level. And that means that we compete in a way that might not be cost effective relative to international imports, but preserves quality and makes sure that the food that we're eating is safe, and made by local businesses that contribute to local economies. So we have a lot that we could be doing on farming to wake up from a little bit of a bipartisan snooze fest when it comes to recognizing the real challenges that farmers face across the board. So with those values in mind, let's talk about targeted income tax relief and the Farmer Bridge Assistance Program specifically. It's an incredibly important program, and it's the least we could do to ensure that our farmers in the state of Georgia are getting the support that they deserve. But it's a broader commentary, too, on the ways that income tax policy can be targeted appropriately in a tailored way to achieve the policy outcomes that we are trying to secure. The problem that we've had this session, and I think this is a larger philosophical discussion about how income taxes work and about the ways that income tax relief works. The problem we've had this session is that the types of income tax relief that have been proposed and passed out of this chamber are not targeted forms of income tax relief. Now, of course, we all voted the other day to give back $250, $500 to individual taxpayers, depending on their status. And that's something that I think people will be able to put to good use. That $500 makes a big difference for a family in potentially meeting some sort of an emergency need. But let's be very clear about what the initiatives in this chamber beyond that really serve to accomplish. Beyond that more modest rebate, slashing tax rates, refunding entire brackets worth of income taxes without really much of a plan of how to replace them, as we've already informed this chamber before, that could cause an up to $9 billion hole in our state budget per year. Again, some of the estimates that were lower than that were calculated on a 6-month basis. So when you look at the full fiscal year effect, the full 12-month effect, the income tax cuts that this chamber passed earlier this session would have a $9 billion per year consequence. And let's talk about what that means in terms of the downstream effects for legislation like this. It means that every conversation that we have about income tax relief is now suddenly squeezed in a way that it was not before. It is under the shadow of a much larger cut, a much larger giveaway to the top earners, the top 20%, that we can no longer afford to give more targeted relief because we're just out of quarters. And you see the downstream effects of this type of income tax giveaway all the way, not just on the floor, but into our committee process. In our committees, we have all kinds of great legislation that comes through with some kind of a fiscal impact. The Retirement Committee is a great example of a committee where we often talk about ways that we could, move the abacus sliders around and move the ledger in such a way so as to increase peace officer annuity benefits or increase the retirement of teachers or of public safety professionals paid out of general revenues. But we feel squeezed when we have those conversations. We go to committee and we talk about how, state revenues just aren't freely available for this sort of thing. And you hear axioms or phrases like, conservative budgeting or fiscal responsibility. But the reality is that all of those conversations are happening against a backdrop of one of the largest proposed income tax, I guess maybe the largest cut to state revenues that's been proposed in a very long time, a reckless level of cut. And so I think we need to be honest. When we have conversations about targeted relief, we have to remember that the only reason that this feels special to us or feels like something that we can't do very often is because the backdrop, the elephant in the room, so to speak, is that there is a much larger giveaway that is being proposed. And so I think, we need to be mindful about the context anytime we are having these conversations, anytime we are making these decisions, that this may feel ordinary once it gets all the way to the floor, but it's anything but ordinary as it moves through the committee process and the Rules Committee. These types of interventions, which are so helpful for our farmers, are going to be less and less available to us the more that we engage in top-level fiscal policy that is designed really to bankrupt government, that is designed to appeal to the philosophical priors of people like Grover Norquist, who famously said that he would drown government in a bathtub if that were up to him. Now, I don't think anybody in this room who sees the great value that state government can provide on a daily basis to the people of Georgia believes that we should be drowning government in a bathtub, and yet that has become the ideological framework against which all of the initiatives in this chamber have been measured, except for the ones that managed to sneak through. But I just can't stress enough the level of honesty and intellectual consistency that this chamber should be engaging in when it comes to those initiatives. Another thing about this bill that I think is worth highlighting is that there is oftentimes in this chamber an interplay between state government and federal government. And we just recently had a vote on an IRS true-up that required this chamber to align its regulations, the state regulations, with federal regulations under the IRC. That got a little bit messy, if you'll recall, because there were changes put into that bill that made it no longer a fair true-up, that it was a true-up with some extra sauce. And that's an area where we get into trouble quite often as well, that the state government, just trying to do meat and potatoes, good government business, stay aligned with federal regulations, we sometimes find ourselves in a situation where we would like to tinker, or a handful of voices within the chamber want to tinker with the legislation to put their own druthers, their own policy preferences into it, but it has the expense, the cost, of making it much more difficult to coherently align state policy with federal policy. And in this case, I will admit to you, I haven't done a tremendous amount of research to see if the state policy in this case is well aligned with the federal policy. And I would welcome any questions when I'm done with my remarks in the nature of explaining to me, if there is some kind of insight that members of the chamber have as to how our state policy could be aligned better with federal farming policy. I think now is really the time to go in depth on that issue and discuss the ways that state policy could better supplement federal policy, even if it's under the Trump administration. I think that's one thing, too, that is really remarkable about this chamber just this session, is we have found a footing, a bipartisan footing, for working under the framework that the Trump administration has created. I think if we're doing our jobs well, we are acknowledging that the Trump administration has put some policies in place that Georgians, whether we like it or not, we're going to work under those policies. And so we need to be marrying what's happening on the state level to the federal level sufficiently, as well as we possibly can. One more note about bipartisanship, because I think a farming bill is an especially good location to have the conversation about bipartisanship. We do have a situation where people on both sides of the aisle have historically had some ideological hang-ups with supporting farmers as well as we could. But I think there's renewed hope in this chamber this session for a level of bipartisanship that this chamber has not seen in a very long time. And I'm talking about the vote on Monday when the senator from the 46th ably, capably came up with an amendment, I think in part inspired by the senator from the 41st, who drafted an amendment for that section, and then we put our heads together and figured out the best way to do it. That was a prime example, just as the chair said at the time, of how this chamber can really perform in a way that people outside the building are expecting us to. You talk to voters of either party, Democrats or Republicans, and they may have their partisan preferences, but they will tell you the same thing, which is when I send you to the Capitol building, I don't want you to just engage in useless partisan antics. I want you to work with the other side to find the solutions in a bipartisan way that we need to address the problems of the day. And I'll tell you, in my 8 years, I have never seen a moment as inspired from a standpoint of bipartisanship as Monday when we were able to come to that solution. And I remember afterwards people in the hallway telling me, lobbyists and others, that they had not seen a moment quite like that, that it was extremely rare
and you hear that roundly from everybody who witnessed the events Monday. And I say all that just to say that this chamber has proved this session, and particularly on days like Monday, that we are capable of achieving a level of bipartisanship even in a highly charged partisan environment that is the type of service, client service, that our voters across the state really expect from us and demand from us regardless of our political affiliation. And notwithstanding that the national temperature has grown even hotter and the raucous, the cacophony at the national level has grown even louder, there is something to be said about Georgia legislators' ability to try to survive that moment by focusing on the work, focusing on these details, the types of bipartisan initiatives that truly move the ball forward, and to be able to do so in a way where even when we have all these pressures nipping at our heels, right? People in the hallway texting you, your voters asking you to turn up the volume and be more partisan, primary season, qualifying season, notwithstanding all of those pressures, genuinely amazing stuff to see that we can keep our heads. And what's that phrase about if you can keep your head when everyone else around you is losing theirs, you inherit the world. That is what enables you to do the work, to focus on what really needs to be focused on, again, in an environment that nationally is increasingly tougher. You know, the last discussion that we just had, the one about telecoms in rural areas, really actually feeds into this bipartisanship conversation even more than I think we're acknowledging. One of the things that I wish to say before debate was closed on the telecoms debate is that cell phones, if you think about it, cell phones, the smartphones we carry around in our pockets, they have a way of polarizing political debate, of shutting down real discussion that landlines never had. Thank you very much. Landlines have one purpose, which is to connect a caller from point A to point B. And during those simpler times, whether it was a wired phone that you have to stretch around the kitchen or a wireless phone but still connected to a landline, the amount of deliberate intention as a conversant that you had to bring to those conversations was really important. It meant that you gave your full attention, your full focus to your conversational partner. But the problem that cell phones have introduced, and I think everybody here knows exactly what I'm talking about, is that your cell phone has 50 notifications, 100 distractions a minute, whether it's iMessage, text message conversations, or it could be incoming calls that you have to mute because you're on Do Not Disturb, or an application on your phone that you've allowed to push notifications. All of those distractions have a way of taking you out of the present moment, of decentering your focus and fracturing our attention. Now, that fracturing of attention is not just metaphorical. This is something that is taking us out of our communities, out of our present awareness. When you're on the road driving, you shouldn't be using your phone. Whether you're walking down the street, just looking at the sidewalk, you shouldn't be using your phone. People are losing their presence in the world around them, and that's not just metaphorical. What it also means is that we are siloed when it comes to information, that we are only receiving the information that we want to hear. Not the information that might be the best news of the day for us to consume, for us to stay informed about the topics of the day, but the information that makes us feel what we already feel, that justifies our prior assumptions that we already came into our day, our week, believing. So we can't have that clash of ideas, that real, genuine contest of debate and of community and collaboration, because these devices that we all have enabled us to live lives of isolation and silo ourselves instead of engaging in real community. So again, that's even more reason to pass HB 998, which we already passed. And Representative Leverett was here, and obviously the debate got kind of wacky, but that's really at the heart of what the senator from the 50th was saying as well. Right? The floor leader was discussing how, things come back around. Bell bottoms come back around. Just because people have moved to this format of communicating with others in the last few years, the last couple decades, doesn't mean that technologies like landlines are completely outdated. And in fact, if we had some kind of a security issue, in Senate Transportation this morning, the senator from the 27th chairing the committee, we were talking about possible security threats that both federal and state actors have tried to assess to see, are there vulnerabilities in devices? And there is a real risk that, a grid that supports technologies like this could go down at some point. I mean, I think we get very egotistical with our new technologies. We start to assume and take for granted that these technologies are always available to us. And what happens? What happens if suddenly our favorite pocket device, which gives us all our information and our driving directions and whatnot, what happens when that shuts down? Maybe we'll be humbled by circumstance and have to go back to using a landline. So again, and you're just trying to add a little bit of flavor and texture to the debate that we already had. That is one more example of why bipartisan cooperation on meat and potatoes issues of the day is so critical. So critical because these vulnerabilities, whether it's security or deliberation vulnerabilities in the use of cell phones, whether it's the failure of both sides of the aisle to really come to grips with what's happening with farmers, there are so many ways that if we can block out the noise and just focus on what really matters at the state government level as colleagues, to employ collegiality in order to overcome those partisan barriers, there's so much that we need to be focusing on that requires us to do that. And I appreciate so much that y'all are patient with me as we reflect a little bit this afternoon on the importance of bipartisanship, because I think things have. We talked earlier today, the president mentioned that things have gotten a little raucous. And, I guess this is a Tom Murphy quote or whoever you want to attribute it to, who said the other party is the opposition, but the other side of the building is the enemy, right? Maybe that's a little bit of the raucousness, but we have our own fair share of partisan raucousness in here as well. And so reflections like these, just like the chaplain of the day said, the ability to stop, the ability to pause, to reflect, right? Be still and recognize that our partisan divides do not define us dispositively. Our partisan divides are not the true measure or test of our character in this building. Once we're able to stop with that level of reflection and self-discipline and awareness, that is the moment at which true bipartisanship is really possible. So it's a remarkable journey we're all on, and that we're all on together. I know that everybody in here, to some degree or another, agrees with what I'm saying about bipartisanship right now, and it's for all of those reasons that I think a unanimous vote today on House Bill 1159 is critical to maintaining that spirit of state government level bipartisanship that we have cultivated especially well at times this session, but to no greater effect than we did on Monday of this week. And with that, Mr. President, I would be happy to yield for any questions from my colleagues.
Recognize the senator from the 2nd.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, do you yield for a series of questions?
I would be so thrilled to yield to my good friend and my colleague, the senator from the 2nd, who, by the way, uses the phrase I-16 in reference to I-16, the interstate that travels all the way down to Chatham County, as metonymy or some kind of a part representing the whole type figure of speech to represent your commitment to representing your constituents in Chatham County in the state capitol located in Atlanta, even though it's a 4 to 5 hour drive for you, depending on traffic. I will be happy to yield to my good friend, the senator down I-16 from District 2 for a series of questions.
Thank you so much, Senator, and for the eloquent introduction of I-16, the two-lane road that impacts many farmers, in which this legislation, if passed today, would seek to help. But, Senator, I do have a few questions. Senator, is it not true that in my Senate district it is home to the Georgia Port Authority, the second largest port authority in the United States, moving significant millions of TEUs?
That is true, Senator, and I will say it was my distinct honor and privilege, along with several members of our caucus, to go visit the ports, to sit in the boardroom, to watch a very detailed PowerPoint presentation that outlined the sheer volume of freight that comes through the ports, through Savannah, and is then distributed not just to Georgia, but all over the southeastern United States, making us one of the busiest ports in the country. And another note on that I think is significant to reflect on is that by virtue of the location of the ports in Savannah and the amount of volume that comes through the southeastern United States as a result, that Trump's tariffs hit the state of Georgia especially hard. The amount of money that Georgians have paid in taxes because of the senseless, arbitrary tariffs that the Supreme Court ruled overstepped Trump's authority. We have already paid several $billion in taxes because of those tariffs. And now that the Supreme Court has overruled those tariffs, there's a real question that I think a lot of our constituents have, which is, are we going to get that money back? Are we going to get a refund? Now, obviously, logistically, that's very difficult to do, but it just goes to show that Georgia, more so than you might expect, was hit by tariffs, hit by these billions of dollars of taxes in a way that people don't really realize until they start to do the math, and that's all thanks to the ports that are located down that two-lane road, I-16, Senator.
And Senator, since you read my mind, my question was as it relates to not only the port being in my district, but as it relates to commodities. And when looking at the crops listed here, two of those crops being peanuts and soybeans, which were impacted by those tariffs globally and caused the global market to shift from consuming Georgia-grown products, and those products were then sourced from other countries. And so when I see the relief that we hope to provide to those two specific commodities, it draws my attention. I know that this bill is related to what was lost in 2025 through Hurricane Helene. But Senator, is it your opinion, or do you think this bill goes far enough to address the concerns that farmers have throughout rural Georgia as it relates to recovering the loss and being able to ship those commodities, and not only the loss, but the price point per dollar that they lost because of those tariffs and the global market then shifting and other countries producing and securing those commodities in other places, putting in extra hardship on those farmers from rural Georgia? Senator, can you opine as to how this would affect that?
Senator, that's a fantastic and thoughtful question that I think gets at some of the fundamental disconnects that folks in the majority in this chamber face when they're trying to balance the partisan primary politics that compel their allegiance to the leader in D.C. with the types of state considerations that I was opining on earlier that deserve our bipartisan focus and attention. I think your question gets to that exact tension that members of the majority must face, because we often find in this room that there are partisan political allegiances to D.C. and to the current administration in Washington that make it much harder for us to do the work that we are supposed to do as state legislators for the state of Georgia. And tariff policy couldn't be a better example. You know, I heard the Speaker of the House, who I respect and count as a friend, go to a forestry event not too long ago at the freight depot, where he had to ask a group of people assembled around the forestry space, in the forestry industry, people who are lobbyists, members of the Capitol. He had to ask if anybody in that group knew how to get in touch with the White House to relay the message that we would like 30 days notice anytime the president puts a new tariff on. I'm going to say that one more time, because I think this is a true story, and the folks in here, I think, would be well advised to think about how significant this is. That the Speaker of the House of the state of Georgia, I believe we're the 8th most populous state with over 11 million residents, has to ask a group of industry folks if somebody happens to have an arbitrary phone connection, talking about cell phones, to the Trump administration for purposes of lobbying the Trump administration to provide more notice before harmful tariffs are implemented. And I think that speaks to the total breakdown of regular order that is happening in Washington right now. It would be, and under a normal administration, you would have intergovernmental affairs channels where the Speaker of the House could easily talk to a legislative assistant, a staffer who could then connect through a pipeline to the White House to make what is an eminently reasonable request about a major policy issue. But the reality is that the Trump administration operates according to the whims of not one man, but the people that he surrounds himself with. It is a regime that is based completely on arbitrary favor and the randomness of whether you have access or not. And this is no knock on the Georgia Speaker of the House, who I think does a good job of managing that chamber. The issue is that he is left without options, because the federal administration operates in such an arbitrary and capricious way. And so now let's zoom out to the big picture. That's just one anecdote of how the difficulties with federal policy and coordinating federal policy through normal intergovernmental affairs channels leads to a breakdown in conditions on the ground that require us in the state legislature to clean up after what's happening in the federal government. And bills like this do good work, and this must be a green board today. I cannot stress enough that if there is one red vote, it's somebody who doesn't understand politics, right? But a purely green board, I think, will send the message that yes, we do want to clean up these messes, but the problem is that these messes are so vast in scope that one modest bill with one targeted type of relief is not going to begin to make up for the amount of economic damage that occurs when federal policy is running wild in this way. So yes, Senator, I think to your point, that question about balance, it's very difficult for us to do enough in some legislation like this to offset what's happening at the federal level, Senator.
And Senator, my final question is, I do not believe that this bill goes far enough to allow those farmers that have experienced the economic hardship to have a tort against the federal government to ensure that they would receive some type of relief as they were impacted as countries secured and purchased those commodities from other countries, not directly from the U.S., but there's direct harm to those farmers. And the way I look at it now, there's no current remedy for those farmers to seek any damages. And so if those tariffs are to be refunded and come back, this bill does not make mention or speak to any opportunity for those farmers to find any relief from this legislation. Is that not true?
Senator, I think in largely speaking, that is true. You know, the powerful do what they will, and the powerless suffer what they must. And unfortunately, because of the chaos at the federal level, you have farmers stuck between a rock and a hard place oftentimes. Now, I will say that U.S. Senators John Ossoff and Raphael Warnock have done a fantastic job of being responsive to farmers and to other constituent groups, not just in urban areas or metro, but in rural areas, to respond directly to the needs that those constituent groups have. And they have secured a great deal of federal funding for things like disaster relief, to support farmers during difficult economic times. We have seen this over and over again in the last few years since 2020, that they have governed for the entire state, and they have put farmers and the Farm Bureau at the forefront of their attention and their deliberation as U.S. Senators. But again, even with the federal delegation being very plugged into the needs of farmers, even with political will at the state level to pass good bipartisan legislation like this, I still believe, and the senator from the 8th could correct me, that many farmers in Georgia still find themselves in the lurch. And so, you know, oftentimes, just like we found with other policy areas, healthcare, transit, you name it, public schools, we have a narrative about how we do a lot for these policy areas, but the reality is that we're creeping very slowly in the direction of progress across all of these different policy areas. So the senator's point is well taken, that this pink sheet today that we're holding is absolutely deserving of a completely green board, but there is so much more that we could be doing to advance the interests of farmers and other groups in this state. I'll yield for further questions.
Senator, you've about exhausted your time, but we do have one quick question. The senator from the 19th, and seriously, your time's expired.
Thank you, Mr. President. Senator, you yield?
I do.
Thank you for your appeal for an entire green board today, and I agree with you and support the farmers in this. I'm wondering if you have an opinion, though, on the people who are going to be voting white, particularly the districts of the 53rd and the 7th.
You know, Senator, that's an interesting question. I think as much as we can, we try to make sure that these seats are filled during session, during the most critical time of the year. I think both parties will get by one member short. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Senator. Your time has expired. Congratulations, 30 minutes. All right. So like the senator from the 14th, I'm a big Jimmy Stewart fan, and he talked the other day about It's a Wonderful Life, which is a great classic, but another great Jimmy Stewart classic is Mr. Smith Goes to Washington, where he famously filibustered for days on end. Kudos, you almost did that. Thank you. All right. What purpose does the senator from the 49th rise?
Thank you, Mr. President. I ask that we move the previous question.
All right, we are ready to do that. So as your wish is our command. I hesitate to ask this, but it's in the script. Does any other senator wish to speak for or against the measure? Chair hears none. Is there objection to the previous question being ordered? Chair hears none, and the previous question is ordered. Is there objection to agreeing to the report of the committee which is favorable to the passage of the bill? The chair hears none. The report of the committee is agreed to. Is there objection to the main question being ordered? The chair hears none. The main question is ordered. The question is on the passage of the bill. All those in favor of the bill vote yea. Opposed nay. The secretary will unlock the machine. On the pass of the bill, the yeas are 51, the nays are 0. This bill, having received the requisite constitutional majority, is therefore passed. All right, Senate, we are going to stand at ease for 30 minutes. We'll reconvene at 1:30. There is lunch in the anteroom that our some gracious sponsors provided for us. So grab a quick lunch, catch up on your text messages, and we'll be back at 1:30.